The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good evening to you wherever you may be. This is Comfortably Zoned Radio, and you're listening to Dodgers Baseball. It's time for Dodgers Baseball, a tale of two cities, from Brooklyn to Los Angeles. My name is Peter Trunk, and with me is my partner, Fred Walin. Fred, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's a little cooler today in Southern California, but Peter, over the weekend it's 100 degrees again, and it's humid as hell.
Oh my! But you've been suffering this season out there. I know you've been talking about the humidity specifically and the temperature generally. But I'm glad you're getting a little bit of relief. Our other person, Ronnie Rabinoviz, is not online with us tonight. Evidently, he's incapacitated in some way, shape, or form. He may be joining us during the show. I'm very, very happy to tell our audience that we have tonight a special guest, a friend of the show for years, and an author, a politician, and she has just joined the Comfortably Zoned Radio with her own show. I'm going to let her talk about that. And we welcome Claire Elizabeth Hall. Claire, how are you?
I'm great, guys. How are you both doing?
Oh, we're doing fine. We're doing fine, and the humidity and the temperature has gone down a bit in L.A. for Freddie, so he should be cool.
Oh, and I'm happy for you, sir.
Yeah. And I just want to welcome you back to the show. And before we get to the subject matter, I want you to tell us, has there been any new developments in your life that you can tell us about, maybe pertaining to a radio show?
Oh, yeah. As you mentioned, I am joining the Zone. I am going to be part of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Well, as you said, I've been a guest for years, but come this weekend, I'm going to become a host. I am going to have my own podcast, and the title is going to be Ask Claire. And, you know, our mutual friend, Ralph Tycho, the founder of this network, pitched me the idea a while back about doing my own show, and I come from a background in radio. I worked in the field off and on for a long, long time, and I said, let me think about it, Ralph, and I got back to him, and we talked it through, and I said, are you willing to have a totally freewheeling, open topic program? Because anybody, you know, who's listened in on our conversations before not only knows I'm very passionate about baseball history and especially the Brooklyn Dodgers, but as you mentioned, I'm also a politician. I've been a county commissioner here on the Oregon coast for 14 years. I'm very passionate about music, literature. As you said, I'm an author. I'm working on a novel about our beloved Brooklyn Dodgers. And as we talked about last time, until a few months ago, I was not Claire Hall. I was Bill Hall. After a lifetime in hiding, I started living my truth as a woman and made the gender transition. So I said, Ralph, what if, you know, obviously we can't cover all those things on one program, but how about if we just kind of hopscotch around for topics from show to show? And he said, sounds great. So Ask Claire launches this weekend.
That's wonderful. That's really, really good, and I wish you all the luck in the world. I'm sure your show will be a terrific hit, and I'm looking forward to being invited on as a guest. And I know that you have background in radio, and Fred Walin, frankly, has gigantic background in radio, doing the pregame and postgame show for the Los Angeles Dodgers out there on KABC, I believe it was, right, Fred?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, KABC. And, the interesting thing about radio, since we both have been very, very close to it, when, like in the radio, the numbers are totally different now, as they were before. There's no question about it. But, like, when I was doing the Hydro Talk in the late 80s, and we had like a 4.7 rating, the average, not the show, but the
Explain that to the people, what 4.7 means. I happen to know only because you explained it to me. Please
it means
take your time and explain that, what that really means.
It means 4.7 people out of every 100 listeners are listening to KABC. And in the 70s, it was even better than that. It was like in the 7s, okay?
And in a market
the
size of Los Angeles, that's a hell of a lot of people, ain't it?
But wait a minute. But the ratings just came out for KABC.
Okay.
They're not in the top 40. They got a 0.1. Now, you get a 0.1 for turning the transmitter on. Now, think about it. The fabled KABC. And, I mean, at one point, like KABC was number one. Had talk show hosts like Michael Jackson, not the singer, but the talk show host, Kim Minyard, people like that, and people who have followed Los Angeles radio would know those names, and nationally.
Oh, yeah.
But anyways, the point is, Claire and Peter, the numbers now are a joke, and of course they're not owned by ABC anymore. I think they're owned by Entercom, but whatever. And they moved the transmitter's still there. They sold the place where they were in Culver City, California, and moved to another place in Culver City. But the whole thing is totally different, and not to be in the top 40 is quite an embarrassment. I'm sorry. Even as somebody who hasn't worked at KBC in 28 years, it's still, it was my favorite station growing up. I started going there. My wife, my mom would drive me at 14, and they let me sit in on a couple of the talk shows because I'd call at a very young age. So it was my favorite station. I always was into the politics of it because there weren't any sports shows at that point when I was growing up. But anyway, the point is they're not in the top 40. I'm embarrassed for KBC.
Yeah.
Oh, that is sad. That is sad.
0.1.
Damn. Like you said, you turn on the transmitter and you get a 0.1.
That's it.
The static would generate a 0.1. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And that's interesting that you started hanging out there when you were 14. I grew up in Portland. I started hanging out at radio stations in Portland when I was 15. I think when you've really got radio in your blood, it gets there early, and it just, even if you go on to do other things, it never leaves you.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a funny story about Portland radio. You ready, Claire?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Sure.
You
sure.
ready, Peter? Okay.
Go ahead.
First day, KEX in Portland. I was worked there.
Oh, yeah.
From here in L.A.
Golden West. Yeah.
First day. They started talking about players who should make the Hall of Fame, and they mentioned Bert Blyleven, and I said Bert Blyleven, born April 6th, 1951, and the caller said, "Oh my God, they've hired somebody who not only knows the players, he knows their birth dates." Little do they know that my birthday is April 6th. So I can name you all the players born on April 6th, but I couldn't name you one player who was born April 7th. And they knew the truth. A year later, I was out of there, and I left there without ever telling them the truth that I really didn't know all players' birthdays.
But it makes for a great story. Yeah.
That's a good story, Fred. I love it. I love that story. You should have told that a long time ago. That was excellent. Excellent.
Well, Peter, you would know how great KEX was at that point. It was the number one station. Down here in L.A., I could listen to Oregon State basketball at night, and the great Darrell Awney was their announcer. And, and then the funny thing about this, and this again is...
Only jumping up and down, Martha. That was his tagline.
Yeah,
yep.
There's no question. And so, again, I grew up listening to KEX. And
oh, yeah.
There was an opening. Okay. They fly me up there. I thought they liked me. They don't call me. So 3 or 4 months later, I called the program director. I said, "Have you ever hired anybody?" He said, "No." I said, well, you don't like me or, something like that? He says, here's the truth, Fred. Nobody from L.A. is ever going to last up here. And I said, why?
Oh.
Come up here again, you'll understand. And this is, again, a true story. It rained every single day I was there. And they didn't count, they didn't even count drizzling as raining. And I had just broken up. I had just broken up with my girlfriend, so I was depressed anyways. But I lived in Lake Oswego, which was it was only like $400 a month, and that was the rich part of the Portland area. So I loved the apartment.
Oh, yeah.
The people were so nice there, but I couldn't handle it. So one day I'm going to see the movie The Witness, which I liked in '85, and I'm coming out, and it's pouring. And this is before cell phones, of course, so I have to find a payphone. I called the program director, Carl Gardner, from the payphone, and I said, Carl, I can't take this anymore. Within 4 weeks, I was back in L.A. So he was right. It's hard for somebody in L.A. To handle constant rain. And so, Claire, I got to give you a lot of credit. You lived up there for a long time.
Well, I was born here, so I guess I got webbing between my feet, but I've not spent enough time in Los Angeles that I can just appreciate the shock it must be. Yeah, for somebody who tries to cope with it after decades of sunshine and yeah.
But Peter, I don't know if you've ever been to the Oregon shore. It is just.
I have not, Fred.
Yeah, that should be on your bucket list because, I mean, as much as I despise the rain, the area is so gorgeous. And the people politically on your side and my side, Peter, and Claire, I don't know your politics, but I know Peter and Fred are on one side politically. And most of the people there are on our side politically. So I love the people. Now the hunting, I've never hunted. I would never shoot an animal in my life. A lot of people like hunting and things like that, and so I could never go when they went. But just a beautiful area, a great area. And I've been back there a couple of times since, and but it was only for like 3 or 4 days, not for a year. And it rained those days too. And anyway, Portland is just a gorgeous area. Eugene, with the University of Oregon, again, it's just a gorgeous area. Corvallis is nice. The whole state is just it's fantastic.
Wow.
It is a green paradise, but it's a green paradise.
If I may, Claire.
So
yeah. If I may, Claire, be so bold as to inform Fred that you are of our political persuasion.
Oh, certainly.
You are a progressive liberal Democrat and always have been. But I just thought I would mention that because Fred wasn't too sure. How far are you living from Portland?
Oh, it depends on which part of Portland you're heading to, but, maybe 110 miles, and depending on traffic, time of day, what part of Portland you're trying to get to, it's anywhere from a 2 to 3 hour drive from here. So, it's very much doable for a day trip. Actually, on Monday, I saw what will probably be my final baseball game of the year. Hillsboro, a suburb to the west of Portland, even though Portland lost its AAA franchise several years ago. Hillsboro is home to a great Class A franchise. As a matter of fact, the Hillsboro Hawks have the best record in minor league baseball this year, and they finished their regular season with a win. But for this old gal, a particular thrill was the Hawks were not the Hawks. It was a throwback game, and every Monday throughout the season, it was Maverick Monday. They wear the uniforms of the Portland Mavericks from 73 to 77. If you follow baseball from that era at all, the Beavers left town after 72, didn't return till 78, but 73 to 77, those were the years of the Portland Mavericks, made immortal in the battered bastards of baseball. But, for a lot of people, when that great film came out, it was a revelation to them. But hey, that was my teen years. In those 5 glorious seasons, I saw so many Maverick games, and I just can't tell you, old sentimentalist that I am, to see the Portland Mavericks take the field again, it was a thrill beyond describing.
That's cool. I want you to know, Claire, that I own 2 flannel zippered jerseys, one home, which is white, and one away, which is gray, with the Beavers on the front stitched on with the bat, not unlike the St. Louis Cardinals, and instead of Cardinals on the bat, on each end of the baseball bat, there are Beavers on it.
Yep.
I have a Portland Beaver home jersey and a Portland Beaver away jersey.
Cool. That was a great franchise for many years, and there's talk that supposedly if in the next few years Major League Baseball does expand, that Rob Manfred has been quoted as saying that, to him the 2 most viable places for expansion are Montreal and Portland. And, I love my job here on the Oregon coast, but if anything could get me to retire in my old hometown, it would be the chance to see Major League Baseball, 82 times a year.
And wouldn't it be fun if not only they expanded into Portland, but they became the Portland Beavers?
Yeah, there's some speculation even, would they resurrect the historic name? Because, there were a couple of gaps in the history, but basically from the founding of the Pacific Coast League until 8 years ago, they were the Portland Beavers, and so that certainly got a lot of history and heritage to it, and I'd be thrilled if that happened, but whatever they call them, a Portland baseball team would be a big thrill for me to be able to see in my older years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you got a ways to go for older years. Listen, we're digressing. I'm supposed to be driving this bus, and I've lost all control. I've lost all control because
but hell, we're having fun, right?
About 25 minutes ago, we were supposed to be talking about a certain subject, and I apologize.
That's okay.
I booked. It sounds so cold, but I'll say it anyway. I booked Claire on the show to speak about one of her many passions and interests, and this one is the wartime Brooklyn Dodgers, the 1941 Dodgers and the 42 Dodgers, and the transition of 2 men. And I know you're going to cover this like a blanket, but let me just preface your remarks by saying that the 2 men that ran the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1941 and then in 1942 could not be any more different than up and down, cold and hot, yes and no, than Larry McPhail and Branch Rickey. But I will let Claire talk about that. Claire, I apologize for being so verbose. Go ahead with what you want to tell us about the 41 and 42 Dodgers.
No, we can get started tonight, but let's continue this conversation another time. But yeah, and I think McPhail and Rickey are a great starting point. At least in my opinion, as an amateur Dodger historian, even though they had won 2 pennants before 1941, 1916 and 1920, the 1941 Dodgers were truly the first great Brooklyn team. And you reach back into Brooklyn history, and by the 1930s, the club had truly fallen on hard times. Ebbets Field, that jewel of a ballpark, had become so dilapidated. The team, frankly, was considered a joke when a certain minor league shortstop found out his contract had been sold by the Louisville Colonels to the Brooklyn Dodgers. He said, "Oh, no, I have to go to Brooklyn? That's the place where you have three guys on the same base and guys getting hit on the head by fly balls. But, the Dodger management did something really brilliant. First, they tried to hire Branch Rickey, who, in my mind, is the most brilliant, baseball executive ever, as well as one of the finest human beings ever. But he was still happily secure running the St. Louis Cardinals. And he said, no, I don't want to come to Brooklyn, but I'm going to recommend Larry McPhail, who was the general manager at the time of the Cincinnati Reds. And even though, as he said, two men could not be more polar opposites in temperament, values, everything else, McPhail started out as a Rickey protege, and indeed the board of the Brooklyn Trust Company, which controlled the bank, which controlled the Dodgers at the time, made Larry McPhail an offer he couldn't refuse, and he took over the Dodgers. And, we can plunge into more detail, but very quickly he convinced them, even though the team was broke, they had to spend money to make money. He painted and refurbished Ebbets Field. He started buying players, trading for players, and within a couple of years he had taken a team that was the laughing stock of the league and turned them into, what Bill James, for one, calls really one of the finest teams in baseball history. And there was no farm system yet. So, the wheeling, the dealing, that young shortstop I mentioned that he pried away from Louisville, only a young man named Pee Wee Reese, and even though the Boston Red Sox had first claim on Mr. Reese's services, thank goodness that there was still a guy ensconced at shortstop in Boston by the name of Joe Cronin, who said, "No, I don't want to bring this Reese kid up and threaten my job," so he let him go. He laid out another chunk of cash to the Philadelphia Phillies to acquire the services of Dolph Camilli, slugging first baseman, who ended up being the National League MVP in 1941. It worked out a very complicated deal, which could probably be an hour in itself, but Pete Reiser, one of the bright jewels in the St. Louis farm system, came over to the Dodgers, and in 1941, before he started running into outfield walls, had one of the finest all-around seasons offensively and defensively ever. He picked players off the scrap heap. Look at Whitlow Wyatt, 22-game winner for the 41 Dodgers, who, had been bouncing around mostly in the American League for years. And then he had acquired a right fielder, a man who went down in history in Brooklyn as the People's Church, Mr. Dixie Walker. Again, had a fair year here with the Yankees, a couple of decent years there with the Detroit Tigers, but in Brooklyn, he found a home, he found a tribe, and he blossomed. And so, and that's just starting to scratch the surface about this amazing team. Your reflections, gentlemen.
Well, if I may be so bold as to say that I can't underline enough how the Dodgers switched almost like a light switch on the wall from being the joke of not only the National League but Major League Baseball into a formidable machine, if you will. When McPhail came to Brooklyn, it was right after, in 1938, it was right after the Dodgers had, God forbid, changed their uniform colors green to green and white.
Actually, okay? Green and tan. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Ugly.
Absolutely gross. He changed their colors to blue and white, which, every schoolboy knows the Dodger colors now. But that was one big thing. And like you said, he might not have renovated in the truest sense of the word Ebbets Field, but layers of brand new paint on everything sure did a hell of a job in sprucing up the old gal. And he did that, and as you mentioned, brought all kinds of ball players. This is before the so-called Ricky system of the farm system.
Right.
He brought all kinds of ball players, not only outfielders and infielders, but pitchers from all over baseball that seemed to flourish in Crown Heights, in Flatbush. They just came into their own, and they delivered. The funny thing about it was the Dodgers did win the pennant in 1941, and it was their first pennant in 21 years. They had won their last one in 1920, but they won the pennant in 1941, and ironically, they won more games in 1942 when they lost the pennant to the St. Louis Cardinals. It's an amazing thing. It's a great story. And this is when I believe, anyway, I may be wrong because this is before I was born. I was born in 1946, so I wasn't around. But this is when I believe, from all my readings and talking to the older people when I was younger, this is when Brooklyn really, really, really fell in love with the Dodgers. And the Dodgers became more than just a baseball team to Brooklynites. They became
a way of life, a religion.
They became their lifeblood. They became their lifeblood. I mean, from priests and nuns to cops and firemen to bus drivers to school teachers to moms,
cab drivers, kids,
right? Shoe shine guys. They all fell in love with the Brooklyn Dodgers, and everyone was talking Brooklyn Dodgers. One of the biggest things that MacPhail did was and I don't know if you mentioned this, and if you did, I apologize. He brought in one Red Barber to do the Dodger games on the radio. Okay, this was huge. This was huge.
Yep.
The Dodgers had signed some sort of an agreement, half-assed agreement, with the New York Giants and the New York Yankees not to I almost said televise. This is before television. Not to broadcast their games because they figured, who the hell is going to come out to your ballpark if they can just switch on their radio? Well, boy, were they wrong. Was Larry MacPhail right. Dodger attendance shot through the roof because of this guy, and he didn't even have a Brooklyn accent. He had a Southern accent.
Yeah, the old redhead.
Yeah, and he said crazy things like, I'll be a what the hell did he say after Lavagetto's hit in the 47 series off of Bill Bevins? I'll be a...
Was it Stuck Egg Mule or something like that?
A Stuck Egg Mule?
Stuck Egg Mule. Uh-huh.
I'll be a Stuck Egg Mule. Now, how many people in Brooklyn knew what a Stuck Egg Mule was? Or
before Red? Probably not too many.
Probably no one.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any mules in Brooklyn. But, that was a brilliant move. Again, one other player move. I reread Leo DeRocher's autobiography a few months ago, and he's talking about the 41 team, the early in the season, really he thinks the team is doing well, but, MacPhail asks him, have you got all the pieces you need? And he said, well, I really think the one place we could improve would be at second base. And MacPhail says, who do you want? And he said, I would love to get Billy Herman from the Cubs. I mean, Billy was, kind of on the downside of what was to be a Hall of Fame career, but still had some gas left in the tank. He said, I'd love to have Billy Herman, but you'll never get him. And then, I don't know, it was within a week, I think he said, DeRocher, who was quite the night owl himself, so it must have been very late at night or maybe very early in the morning. He's sound asleep in his hotel room. The phone rings, and he very groggily says, "Hello," and MacPhail just roars into the phone. "Say hello to your new second baseman." And he hands the phone to Billy Herman.
I just won you the pennant. I just won you the pennant.
Yep. And luckily for Leo, he delivered. Although, again, in the few years the two of them worked together, I think DeRocher said by his informal count, MacPhail fired him 70 times and then rehired him 70 times.
Yeah. Yep.
I think it was Red Barber's line. One of Red Barber's classic lines was about Larry MacPhail. He said, "With one drink in him, he was a genius. With 2 drinks, he was a madman. Unfortunately, he seldom stopped at one."
Yeah, really. Yes, that's a Red Barber quote. That's a Red Barber quote about Larry MacPhail. Yep. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it's amazing that at the end of 42, as the season closed, MacPhail realized he had kind of worn out his welcome in Brooklyn and handed them his resignation before they asked for it. But then they turned to Branch Rickey again, and this time Rickey was ready to come east, and a whole nother glorious era in Brooklyn Dodger history was born. I mean, without Rickey, that amazing farm system, probably the integration of the game with Jackie Robinson, and all the things that were to happen in the post-war years. The wartime seasons, as I know you know, gentlemen, but were pretty lean, but Rickey was smart. He knew the war wasn't going to go on forever, and he was, stockpiling young ball players, I think the way a farmer fills silos with grain. Dang, I'm waxing poetic, even for me.
Well said. You are waxing poetic. Didn't Larry MacPhail go into the service?
He did. Yes. He became a colonel, and then after the war, he bought his way into ownership of the Yankees, and after a couple of years with the Yankees, he resigned, went back to his farm in Maryland. I think he dabbled in horses, but still, a relatively young man. He never worked in baseball again, although, of course, his son Lee became a pretty distinguished baseball executive himself, eventually president of the American League. They were the only father and son team in the Hall of Fame as executives.
Claire, you're starting to break up. I'm going to say that you are on a cell phone. Am I correct? I think we lost her. I should have told her off the air before the show started that the best way to do these shows is on a landline phone. I believe we've lost her. Perhaps she'll call back in. Fred, you still there?
Yeah, let me just say this.
Sure.
The Dodgers from 41 until they left Brooklyn after the 57th season, you could make the case in that 15, 16-year period were among the top 10 teams in a 15-year period in history. I don't know. Obviously, the Yankees of the Ruth and Gehrig, and obviously the Big Red Machine. But for a 15-year period, and certainly from 46 through 57, they were most always in the division, in the pennant race. And, unfortunately, of course, there was only one World Series in 1955. And I think the pennants that they should have won and didn't win is Bobby Thompson took that away. And my point is that you guys talking about a change totally from they were bums. They were bad. They were a horrible team. And then all of a sudden, in a 15-year period, they became one of the strongest clubs in baseball at the time.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
The Dodgers dominated. There were so many years that they outright won the National League pennant, and there were more than a few years when they should have won.
Yep.
They won 105 games in 42 and didn't win. They tied in 1946 and lost the playoff to the Cardinals in 1946. In 1950, they lost on the final day of the season to the Phillies in the ninth inning, and in 51, of course, the shot heard around the world. I think I heard in the background Claire rejoining us. Claire, are you there?
I'm back. Yeah, I don't know what happened, guys. Sorry about that, but
all right. Here's what I wanted to tell you, and I should have told you this. I should have told you this before we went on the air, especially for your show, Ask Claire, which is going to come on to this radio network. It's always better for some reason, don't ask me why, but I've been doing this for quite a while now. It's always better to use your landline phone instead of a cell phone. If you're using a cell phone, I would eschew that after tonight and not use it again for these shows. For some reason, after a while, they fade and they disconnect.
I'm sure that is good advice, but unfortunately, I'm one of these people who ditched the landline a few years back. So,
oh, did you really? Okay. All right. I'm just saying
that
I have found that to be true. I'm just passing along. I'm not telling you what to do by any stretch of the imagination. No. What I'm doing is giving you advice from someone who has been through negative things happening on my own radio show, and it seems like when you finish your show and Ralph posts it on the internet, and you go to let's say YouTube and you want to re-listen to your show, it's like I was horrified at my first few dozen shows years back when I said, I can hardly hear myself. I can't. First I'm loud, then I'm soft, then it's garbled, then it's this. Then I used to play things by Red Barber or Vince Scully, and they wouldn't come out. And I said, what the hell is that all about? And I asked Ralph, and I said, Ralph, I'm astonished and I'm stunned. He said, all you got to do is use your landline phone, and that stuff will not happen. For some reason, cell phones play havoc, or this radio station, however it's set up, plays havoc with cell phones. I thought you'd like to know that. That's all. And it's happened over and over to me throughout the years. Just mention that when we did lose you, Fred was telling us about the Brooklyn Dodgers from 41 to 57, and more specifically from 46 to 57, that the Dodgers probably should be ranked among the top 10 teams of all time, or could be arguably ranked among those teams. And I agreed with him, and then you got back online. What do you feel about that? How do you feel about that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, no question about it. That you pick, I don't know, maybe the Boys of Summer teams. You go maybe from 49, say, till 56. But yeah, I mean, or if you have to pick one, I mean, I know on our Brooklyn Dodger pages on Facebook, one of the things I think people delight in arguing about is which was better, the 53 team, which had more depth, won more games, or 55 because they finally won it all. But yeah, that Dodger lineup, I mean, Jackie and Billy and Pee Wee and Gil and Campy and Nuke and the Duke and Carl Furillo, the Emperor of Right Field, and I mean, definitely in my book, one of the truly great baseball teams of all time.
Yeah, that era was unbelievable. And, you know, I have always argued that the 53 Dodgers were perhaps the better team between 53 and 55. But I will tell you this. In 1952, in the 1952 World Series, the Dodgers were up 3-2.
Yeah.
Coming back to Ebbets Field.
Uh-huh.
I mean, they had the 52 series wrapped up.
Yep.
And they lost Game 6 and they lost Game 7. It just it's amazing. The baseball gods just didn't smile down on them until 1955. And I know a lot of my Yankee fan friends say, "Well, you only won in 55 because Mantle was hurt." And you know, what can I say?
Yeah, but I mean, the game's full of what ifs. I mean, losing literally on the final day in both 50 and 51 for the pennant, and you can argue. I think 51. I think there are at least two schools that I see, on our Facebook groups. The people who feel it was a stolen pennant because of the giant sign stealing, and then the people who think that Charlie Dressen lost it with a lot of his stupid managerial decisions, and to me maybe a little bit of both. But yeah, you just give those Dodgers a modicum of luck and at least one more, at least one more pennant, maybe two more, and at least a couple of more World Series titles. Easily.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. A little tiny bit of luck, a modicum of luck, as you'd say, and as you just said, and they win two more pennants and one more World Series in my book. Yep. They would have won. I know it's all woulda, shoulda, coulda, but they probably should have won the 52 World Series, and they definitely should have won the pennant in 1951. But we'll let that. That's baseball. That's the way it goes. I mean.
Yeah.
That's right. It's a game of inches, but that,
It is.
It is. In the background, as we're doing our show, I have on my 55-inch flat screen, without any sound, I have the Dodger game on right now, and they're getting their asses whipped by the Mets 5-2 in the fifth inning, and the Mets are threatening with runners at first and third. Anyway, the Dodgers have 24 games left, Fred. 24 games left. They have to win 16 of those games. Is it 16 of those? Yeah, I believe it's 16. I don't have the stats in front of me. The Dodgers have to win 16 of their remaining 24 games to finish with 90 wins. Do you think 90 wins will put them into the postseason, Fred?
Yeah, but it's going to be tough because Jansen or no Jansen, the way he's pitching and the rest of the relief corps, they've lost so many games this season in the 8th and 9th. You can't trust it. And so, I said a couple of months ago I thought they'd win by 5 games, but that was before Jansen went down. But
yeah.
Again, if you're Andrew Friedman and Zahari in the front office, you tried to prove how smart you were, and now they pick up Matson, but who knows? His ERA is over 5. Who knows if he's 100%? So I think it's going to go down to the last couple games, and a couple of those games they were already blown that they should have won. They're going to go down.
Oh boy!
And certainly with Roberts pulling a pitcher, he's almost. I mean, you're almost forced, even if Robert's attitude is 6 innings is enough, to try 7 or 8 because you do not want your relief corps to have to face the other team for more than a few outs. But he won't do that, so except for Kershaw. So he's still going to be pulling them after 6, and there's going to be a lot of times they're up 5-2 after 6 that they may not hold on to win. So in answer to your question, I don't know which one of the 3 teams will win, but I think it's going to be very, very close. And the Dodgers' injuries, Arizona's had their share of injuries too, so I don't think you can use that excuse.
True.
Shelby Ray and Shelby Miller,
I agree.
who would be their second and third pitchers. Ray's back, but Miller's not. I mean, he's back, but he's hurt again. My point is they lost their second and third pitchers, so they've had a lot of injuries also, and of course Pollock's been out, so a couple times. So you can't use the excuse. The only reason for this problem is they didn't get any relief before July 31.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure both of my people here on the line with me will remember Al Davis, the owner of the Raiders football team. His big line was "Just win, baby." And if you look at the rest of the schedule, the National League schedule, and generally, but specifically in the West, the Rockies and the Arizona Diamondbacks play each other 6 times. And that's good news for the Dodgers because while they're playing each other, the Dodgers just have to do what Al Davis said. Just win, baby. Because one of those teams is going to be losing every night because they're playing each other. Somebody has to win, somebody has to lose. If the Dodgers just win, baby, they'll be sitting pretty at the end. But not only do I think it's going to go down to the end, Fred, I think it may go to the final day.
Could be. Mm-hmm. It really.
I think. So.
I don't sense anybody really is in a commanding position to run away with it.
Nope.
I think you're probably right. It's not as bad as 1945 though. The depths of wartime baseball, and I wish I could remember who said it, but that was the year of the Tigers-Cubs World Series, and after 3 seasons of losing so many players to war, those were not quality pennant-winning clubs. And what was it? Supposedly somebody in the press box said, well, who do you think's going to pull it out? And one of the other wise guys in the press box said, frankly, I don't think either team can win.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yep.
Yeah, well, it's crazy. Last year, I know the Dodgers hit that very cold, frozen spell in September when they kept losing night after night after night. But all in all, last year, what the Dodgers did was hit grand slam home runs, hit when runners were in scoring position. They would pummel the other teams, and they were amazing. This year is just the opposite. They can't buy a hit when there's runners in scoring position. They just don't seem to pull off the big play when it's mandatory that they do so. And I just get a very different feel from this Dodger team. But I'm reminded by my own age and my own experiences that the best team, although most of the time wins in the NBA and the NFL, that's not true in Major League Baseball. A lot of times, the best team doesn't win, and it's because of pitching and it's just weird. It's a weird sport. It's a crazy sport.
Let me just throw something out to you guys.
Sure, go ahead.
As of a couple of nights ago, the Dodgers had hit 189 home runs. And this is on your conversation about not clutch hitting and whatever. They, as of let's say 3-4 nights ago, they had hit 189 home runs, which is a lot. The Yankees, of course, many more, but 189 is not bad. And because they're going to end up with the 220. But of those 189 home runs, how many do you think were with nobody on base?
It seems to me. Now I'm going to try to be funny here. About 175. It seems to me, but of course, I'm just trying to be a funny guy. But I will preface my guess by saying that Muncy has 32 home runs and only 62 RBIs.
Yeah.
So that's like completely crazy. That's completely nuts to have 62 runs batted in with 32 home runs. That doesn't even no little leaguer would even be able to make sense out of that. I'll take a guess. Out of 189, maybe 99 of them were solo.
Claire, what do you say?
I was going to say 89.
No, out of the 189, it's a couple nights old now, so it's a little bit different. 129 of the 189 were with nobody.
That's
oh
crazy.
My God!
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Crazy, crazy. Well, we've watched. I know Fred watches whenever he can. I watch whenever I can, and I'm going to tell you something. I have seen games this summer that the Dodgers have hit 3 or 4 home runs and lost the game.
Yeah.
Because those 3 or 4 home runs were solo home runs.
Yep.
I've seen it over and over. It's crazy. It's just nuts. It drives you nuts. It just drives you nuts. I don't know how many times I've seen them leave the bases loaded or second and third, where I get off the couch, I grab my dog's leash, and I put the leash on him, and I leave the house. I just have to get out of the house. I have to walk in the dark. I have to walk around the neighborhood in the dark. I just can't take it. It's so frustrating. It's beyond frustrating. It's crazy. Now watch them win the World Series and make me look like a fool. But I'll gladly look like a fool if they could pull that off. But I don't know. I text a bunch of my friends during each and every Dodger game. I have 3 people that I text back and forth almost inning by inning, sometimes pitch by pitch. And I write them off like when the other team hits a 3-run homer in the second inning, I said, that's the ball game. You may as well turn on a movie. They're not coming back. And, of course, they never come back. This year they don't come back. They lose. They lay down. They die. They get 2 hits for the whole game, 3 hits for the whole game. They get shut out or whatever, and they lose. Today, I'm watching the Boston Red Sox. They're down 7-1. I said, well, this is a good time to turn off the TV and read a book. They win 9-8. They come back and win 9-8. Now that's a team. They're like 97-44 or something like that. The Red Sox. They just never 7-1 doesn't mean shit to them. Doesn't mean a thing. It's like 1-0 to the Red Sox. They just keep pounding.
Oh, yeah.
They never stop. It's just the difference in the energy, and it's palpable when you watch it on the big screen. It's crazy. Anyway, I want to thank both of you for a successful show, and Claire, you're invited back anytime you want. You just let me know. You message me. You tell me what you want to talk about, and we will make a show out of it. No problem. Fred, thank you for being here. Thanks for all your input, and I hope it stays cool out there in the valley for you. And get off the phone now and enjoy the Mets beating the Dodgers 5-2 in the 6th inning. Anyway, thank you again, both of you, and good night to both of you. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Thank you, gents.
Bye.
Bye.
This has been a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.